When God is silent, it's easy to assume He's absent. Our hearts begin to echo questions like, why hasn't He responded? Or did He turn His face away? In those quiet seasons, it can feel like heaven has gone mute. But silence is not the same as absence. In fact, some of the most transformative encounters with God happen not in His loudest answers, but in His quietest withdrawals. We are trained by the world to equate communication with noise. We measure connection through conversation, presence through activity, and reassurance through visible signs. But God operates on a different frequency, one not always registered by our physical senses. His silence is not emptiness, it's an invitation. It calls us into a kind of stillness that the soul is often too distracted to enter on its own. The silence of God is never random. It is intentional, purposeful, and deeply loving. When He chooses to be quiet, He's not ignoring us, He's inviting us to go deeper. He's inviting us to step beyond what's familiar, to move from the emotional into the spiritual, from dependency on feelings into the discipline of trust. In these quiet seasons, God is drawing out the noise from within us. The rush of anxiety, the echo of insecurity, the whirlwind of unmet expectations, all of it rises to the surface when we don't hear an immediate response. And that's where the work begins. That's where we learn to sit with our neediness, our fears, and our questions, and we bring them into the light. Not for immediate resolution, but for refinement. Not for escape, but for encounter. Stillness is where we discover that faith is not just believing God will do something, but trusting that He is something, even when we feel nothing. The absence of a dramatic moment doesn't mean the absence of a divine one. Often it is in the stillness that God speaks the loudest, just not in the way we expected. He may not be moving mountains in front of us, but He's moving something within us, and that shift, though invisible, is often more critical than any external answer we seek. When God is silent, He is stripping us of our tendency to treat Him like a means to an end. He's slowing us down so we can stop chasing outcomes and start cherishing His presence. That presence may not always feel warm or loud, but it is always faithful. Sometimes He doesn't speak because He trusts that we are finally in a place where we will still follow without constant reassurance. Silence then becomes a sign of trust, not neglect. And isn't that what true intimacy looks like? Think about the people you trust most deeply. You don't need constant words to believe they are there. In fact, the most meaningful presence is often a quiet one. In the same way, God wants us to become confident in His character, not just His voice. He wants our faith to be rooted in who He is, not just what He says. Silence reveals whether we're chasing God or chasing comfort. Are we seeking His heart or merely His hand? Are we only pressing in because we want something? Or do we love Him enough to remain even when we hear nothing? These are hard questions, but they purify our walk. They strip away the performance and bring us back to the essence of relationship. Some of the greatest biblical breakthroughs happened after long stretches of silence. Joseph waited in a prison. David waited in caves. Jesus Himself waited in a garden where even heaven seemed to hold its breath. Yet in all of these moments, silence was not abandonment. It was preparation. It was the womb of something holy. When you feel like God is silent, remind yourself, He is not gone. He's listening more intently than you know. He sees the ache, the confusion, the frustration. And while you may not hear a response today, He is shaping something far deeper than an answer. He is shaping you. So don't run from the silence, enter into it, sit with it, let it do its work, because sometimes the quietest seasons birth the loudest faith. And in that stillness, if you truly listen, not with your ears, but with your spirit, you may just realize He's been speaking all along. When we pray and don't receive an answer, when doors remain closed and silence stretches longer than our faith feels strong, our first instinct is often to assume rejection. We wonder if God has said no, or worse, if He's not listening at all. But the truth is often far deeper, more layered than we initially perceive. God's delays are not His denials, they are His developments. God is not bound by time. He is not pressured by our deadlines or driven by our emotional timelines. His silence doesn't mean He has stopped caring. It means He is crafting something in the hidden place. It's hard for us to accept that because we live in a world of instant results. We want instant clarity, instant healing, instant answers. But God, being both Father and Master Artist, doesn't rush the process. He isn't just trying to fix your situation, He's forming your soul. Consider this: when a seed is planted in the ground, it seems like nothing is happening. Days go by, weeks even, and the surface remains unchanged. But beneath the soil, a miracle is unfolding. Roots are taking hold, the foundation is being laid. The delay is not the death of the seed, it is its preparation for life. And often, our unanswered prayers are not ignored cries. They are seeds of transformation planted in the dark. This waiting, this silence isn't wasted. It is holy. It refines us. It teaches us to hope in what we cannot see, to endure without evidence, to trust without confirmation. That kind of trust stretches us. It matures us. And without it, we remain spiritually shallow, always needing a sign to believe, always depending on an emotional high to feel close to God. But God is too good to leave us in that fragile place. He uses the delay to grow something strong and rooted within us. Maybe what you're waiting for is less important than who you're becoming while you wait. In that gap between the prayer and the answer, God is working. Sometimes He's softening our hearts. Sometimes He's removing the idols we didn't even realize we built. Sometimes He's teaching us to let go, to stop controlling outcomes, to finally rest in His sovereignty. In that kind of inner transformation often requires time, silence, and surrender. When you think about how deeply you love someone, you don't just want to give them what they ask for. You want to give them what they're ready to receive. You want what's best for them, not just what's immediate. God is the same. His love is not pampering, it's parenting. His desire is not to give you what you want the moment you want it, but to prepare you for something better, something you'll be ready to steward with wisdom and gratitude. Sometimes the delay is about alignment. God may be orchestrating things behind the scenes, working in other hearts, aligning details, and creating opportunities you can't yet see. The answer may be on its way, but the timing must be precise. If it arrives too soon, it could collapse under the weight of unprepared shoulders. If it arrives too late, the window may close. But in God's hands, everything unfolds in divine precision. What if the very thing you're frustrated about is actually the fingerprint of a God who loves you too much to rush you? What if the silence is Him holding back the floodgates until you're strong enough to swim in the current? We must begin to see waiting not as punishment, but as preparation. We must learn to walk by faith and not by sight, to hold on not because we see the outcome, but because we trust the one who holds it. God's delay is His way of forming Christ in you. He is making you more patient, more trusting, more whole. And when the answer finally comes, when the door opens, the breakthrough arrives, the healing happens, you won't just rejoice in what He gave. You'll understand why He waited. You'll see the wisdom in the silence and the beauty in the timing. So don't misinterpret God's quiet. He is not distant. He is deliberate. And when He delays, He's not dismissing you. He's developing you. Prayer, for many, has become something transactional. A request is made, and we expect a result quick, tangible, and preferably aligned with our desires. We often unconsciously treat God like a divine vending machine. Insert faith, push the button of hope, and receive an answer. But what if prayer was never about getting what we want? What if prayer was never meant to be a spiritual shortcut to our version of happiness, but instead the furnace through which our souls are purified and reshaped? Prayer isn't a transaction, it's a transformation. We enter prayer wanting answers, but God offers something better, His presence. We step into prayer to change our circumstances, but God uses prayer to change us. It is in that sacred space where heaven meets our humanity, that our hearts are laid bare and our motives are exposed. Prayer confronts us with ourselves, and it teaches us that intimacy with God is not built on getting what we ask for, but on becoming who we were created to be. So often, when God is silent, it's not because He's ignoring us, it's because He's working on us. In the silence, He purifies our desires. In the waiting, He reveals where our trust truly lies. Prayer is not about bending God's will to fit ours, it's about allowing His will to bend our hearts. When Jesus taught His disciples to pray, He didn't begin with requests. He began with alignment, "Your kingdom come, your will be done." That was never meant to be a poetic phrase, it was a foundational reality. Prayer is not about asking God to build our kingdom, it's about surrendering to the building of His. And that kind of prayer requires deep trust, unwavering humility, and a willingness to be undone. The danger of seeing prayer as a transaction is that we become consumers of the divine. We pray only when we need something. We praise only when we receive something. But the moment God delays, the moment silence replaces signs, we begin to doubt His love or question His nearness. This reveals something about the state of our hearts. We are often more attached to what God can do than to who God is. Transformational prayer, on the other hand, doesn't collapse when answers are delayed. It endures. It becomes the place where character is shaped, pride is dismantled, and spiritual maturity takes root. The more time we spend in that sacred exchange, not demanding but surrendering, the more we begin to reflect the one we are speaking with. Prayer is meant to make us more like Christ, and Christ Himself showed us the weight of true prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. He prayed, "If it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." There it is again, the surrender, the transformation, the holy tension between honest desire and divine will. Jesus didn't use prayer to escape suffering, He used it to embrace obedience. When we enter prayer with that kind of heart, it becomes more than words. It becomes worship. Even when the answer is wait, even when the silence stretches on, we learn to say, "You are enough." And in that moment, something shifts inside us. We begin to detach from the outcome and attach ourselves more deeply to God's presence. We stop needing proof of His love because we start experiencing it in the stillness. This is the slow, sacred work of transformation. It's not flashy, it's not always emotional, but it is real. God takes the raw materials of our grief, our longing, our desperation, and He does His deepest work through prayer. So if you've been praying and haven't received an answer, don't assume your words have vanished into the void. They've been caught by a Father who is far more interested in your wholeness than your comfort. Don't give up. Keep praying, not because it will manipulate God into moving faster, but because every moment in prayer is a moment being shaped, humbled, and renewed. Prayer is not about changing God's mind, it's about letting God change ours, and in that divine process we don't just get answers, we become answers. We become people of peace, of faith, of unshakable hope. We become the kind of people who can carry His presence with wisdom, strength, and grace. Prayer isn't the path to getting what we want. It's the path to becoming who we're meant to be. Faith that depends on emotion is fragile. It rises with joy and falls with sorrow. It dances when we feel blessed but collapses when we feel abandoned. The truth is, many of us unknowingly tether our spiritual confidence to our emotional state. If we feel God, He must be near. If we don't, He must have left. But this understanding is shallow and ultimately destructive. because faith true, enduring, mature faith must learn to see beyond feeling. It must anchor itself in something deeper than emotion. It must anchor itself in truth. Feelings are real, but they are not always reliable. They are shaped by our circumstances, our hormones, our sleep, our relationships, and our environment. Feelings fluctuate, but God does not. If we're not careful, we will begin to treat God like our emotions only present when we feel Him. But God's presence is not subject to our perception. He is present because He promised to be. He is near not because you feel Him, but because He said, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." That's the foundation faith must stand on, what God says, not what we feel. Learning to walk by faith means learning to trust in God's character, even when His voice is silent. It means choosing to believe in His goodness when life looks anything but good. This is the crucible of real spiritual maturity, when we choose trust in the middle of unanswered prayers, unhealed pain, and unseen outcomes. It's in these moments, the ones where everything feels wrong, that we decide whether we're following feelings or following truth. We must remember, God's silence is not His absence. His stillness is not His apathy. Sometimes the silence is an invitation to grow deeper. He hides so we'll seek. He delays so we'll mature. He remains quiet not to punish us, but to purify us. Because in the quiet, in the space where emotions give way to endurance, something sacred begins to form, conviction. Conviction that God is still good. Conviction that He is still working. Conviction that He still hears, still sees, still moves, even if we can't trace Him in the moment. Faith that sees beyond feelings refuses to treat God like a mood. It refuses to reduce the Creator of the universe to an emotional high. It chooses instead to worship in the valley, to pray through the silence, to believe in the dark what was revealed in the light. That is where intimacy is born, not in the mountaintop moments, but in the nights when the heavens are still and the heart is aching. And yet we whisper, "I still trust you." This kind of faith isn't loud, but it is unshakable. It's the kind of faith that refuses to be manipulated by circumstances. It clings to God not because of what He does, but because of who He is. It doesn't need constant reassurance to remain steady. It doesn't need signs to keep believing. And in a world obsessed with instant gratification and emotional stimulation, this kind of faith stands out. It endures, it shines, it transforms. One of the greatest dangers in modern spirituality is the idolization of feelings. We want to feel God all the time, and if we don't, we assume something's wrong. But feelings are not the foundation of faith. Truth is. And the truth is, God is faithful, God is present, God is working, even when you don't see it, even when you don't feel it. And when you stand on that truth, unmoved by the winds of emotion, you are no longer a child in your faith. You are becoming rooted. There's a deeper joy, a stronger peace, and a more powerful love that comes when we stop chasing feelings and start chasing truth. Because truth doesn't shift, it doesn't fade, and when the storm comes, and it will, it is the truth, not your feelings, that will hold you. So, if you're in a season where God feels far away, where your prayers seem to echo in silence, where your heart is heavy, but the heavens are quiet, don't retreat, don't give up, don't measure your faith by your emotions. Instead, press in, stand firm, declare truth. Remind your soul of who He is, not how you feel, because real faith is not the absence of doubt or pain. It's the decision to trust anyway. Faith that sees beyond feeling is not just stronger, it is transformational. It makes us stable, grounded, and ready for anything. It gives us a vision that pierces through confusion, a peace that passes understanding, and a love that endures all things. This is the kind of faith that changes not only how we see God, but how we live for Him.